Let's go. We got another 30 minutes. Okay, so um um but when you actually give them that feedback, they feel slightly disappointed, but not awful. They feel slightly disappointed, but not awful. Great. Reading from thinking. Okay. Okay, let's go. Um, Moreover, they feel much less disappointed when the feedback came from a computer than from a clinician. Why? Because it is much easier to rationalize feedback from a computer than a clinician. After all, what did the machine know? What's interesting is that subjects don't realize in prospect that they will do this. Research such as these suggest that people just aren't looking forward to their opportunities for rationalization. What the hell is this, bro? What is this? I got it in the book and everything. What is that? Research results such as these suggest that people just aren't looking forward to their opportunities for rationalization when they predict their future happiness. Consider another mechanism that causes the impact bias. I spend a lot of time asking people to imagine how they would feel a year after their child died. As you can imagine, this makes me very popular at parties. Everybody gives the same answer, of course, which is some form of, I would be totally devastated. And remember, this is a year after the child has died that they're supposed to picture. Okay. Then I ask them what they did to come to that conclusion, and they'll almost always report that they had a horrifying mental image of being at a funeral at which their child is being buried, or of standing in the child's room looking at an empty crib, etc. These horrifying images serve as the basis for their predictions, which, as it turns out, are wrong. The clinical literature suggests that people who lose a child are not usually thoroughly devastated a year later. The event has lasting repercussions, of course, but what is remarkable about the people who experience it is just how well they usually do. As your grandmother said, it goes on. Um, oh, so I shouldn't. I felt like I said that too nonchalantly. As your grandmother said, life goes on. So, why do people mispredict their reactions to tragedies like this one? A mental image captures one moment of a single event, but one's happiness a year after the event is influenced by much more than the event itself. A lot happens in a year. There are birthday parties, school plays, promotions, lovemaking, dental appointments, hot fudge sundaes, and so on. These things aren't nearly as important as a tragedy, of course, but they are real. There are a lot of them, and together they have an impact that forecasters tend not to consider. When we're trying to predict how happy we will be in a future that contains event X, we tend to focus on event X and forget about all the other events that also populate that future, events that tend to dilute the hedonic impact of event X. In a sense, we are slaves to the focus of our own attention. We tend to focus on event X and forget about all the other events that also populate that future that tend to dilute the hedonic impact of event X. For example, in one study, we asked college students to predict how happy or unhappy they would be a few days after their home team won or lost a football game, and they expected the game to have a large impact on their hedonic state. But when we simply asked them to name a dozen other things that would happen in those days before they made their predictions, the game had far less impact on their predictions. In other words, once they thought about how well populated the future was, they realized that the game was just one of many sources of happiness and that its impact would be diluted by others. When you study errors such as these, it is only natural to wonder how they might be avoided. And people are always asking me if I would like to develop programs to improve people's affective forecasting accuracy. Before we rush out to develop such programs, we should ask whether the impact bias is something we want to live without. Errors in human judgment are logical violations. If you say you'll feel 7 on a 1 to 10 scale and you actually end up feeling 5, then you've made a mistake. But is that mistake a bad thing? The fact is that errors can have adaptive value. For example, perhaps it is important for organisms to believe they would be thoroughly devastated by the loss of their offspring, and the fact that this isn't actually true is besides the point. What may matter is that the organism thinks it is true and acts accordingly. Because what if you're like, actually, I'll be fine if this one passes. Let them go play in the street. Perhaps the best way to think of an error in judgment is like a mosquito in an ecosystem. You see the darn pest, and your first inclination is to ask, how do we get rid of these? Do you spray DDT and you kill all the mosquitoes, and then you find out that the mosquitoes were at the bottom of a food chain, and the fish ate the mosquitoes, and the frogs ate the fish, and the bears ate the frogs, and now the entire ecology is devastated. Similarly, errors in human judgment may be playing important roles that scientists don't see, and that errors doesn't see, or certainly doesn't stress. Many economists. Wait, we have audio, right? Yeah, okay. Many economists believe that affective forecasting errors are impediments to rational action and hence should be eliminated, just as we would all. I just want to make sure this paragraph is being repeated. Because John Brockman quoted this in the intro. Gotcha. Many economists believe that affective forecasting errors are impediments to rational action and hence should be eliminated, just as we would all agree that illiteracy and innumeracy are bad things that deserve to be eradicated. But cognitive errors may be more like optical illusions than they are like illiteracy. The human visual system is susceptible to a variety of optical illusions, but if someone offers to surgically restructure your eyes and your visual cortex so that parallel lines no longer appear to converge on the horizon, you should run as far and fast as possible. I'm interested in learning how people can become better affective forecasters, but not because I believe that people should become better affective forecasters. My job as a scientist is to find and explain these errors and illusions, and it is up to each individual to decide how they want to use our findings. With that said, our research does suggest that there is a simple antidote to affective forecasting errors. Consider this. There are 2 ways to make a prediction about how you're going to feel in the future. The first is to close your eyes and imagine that future. To simulate in your own mind and preview your own hedonic reaction. And that's the prompt construal method. Okay. That's the kind of affective forecasting we've studied extensively, and what we now know is that the process of projecting oneself into the future is fraught with error. But there's a second way to make fraught with error. But there's a second way to make these kinds of forecasts, namely to find somebody who's already experiencing that future and observe how they actually feel. If you were trying to decide whether you should take job X or job Y, you might try to imagine yourself in each of them. But you might instead observe people who have job X and job Y and simply see how happy they are. What we've discovered is that A, when people do this, they make extremely accurate affective forecasts. And B, no one does this unless you force them to. Try this thought experiment. You're going to go on a vacation to a tropical island. It's offered at a very good price, and you have to decide whether you're willing to pay. You are offered one of two pieces of information to help you make your decision. Either you can have a brochure about the hotel and the recreational activities on the island, or you can find out how much a randomly selected traveler who recently spent time there liked his or her experience. Which would you prefer? In studies we've done that are modeled on this thought experiment, roughly 100% of the people prefer the kind of information contained in the brochure. After all, who the hell wants to hear from some random guy when they can look at the brochure and judge for themselves? They can't judge for themselves, dumbass. Nonetheless, if you actually give people one of these two pieces of information, they more accurately predict their own happiness when they see the random traveler's report than when they see Van. And you know, he had a note at the beginning. Oh, errors are... No, I'm just fine. I mean, he did. But anyway. Than when they see the brochure. Why? Because the brochure enables you to simulate what the island might be like and how much you'd enjoy it. But as I've mentioned, these sort of predictions are susceptible to a wide variety of errors. On the other hand, another person's report enables you to avoid these errors because it allows you to base your predictions on real experience rather than imaginary experience. If another person liked the island, the odds are that you will like it too. There's a delicious irony here, which is that the information we need to predict how we'll feel in the future is usually right in front of us in the form of other people. Delicious. But because individuals believe so much in their own uniqueness, because we think we're so psychologically different from others, we refuse to use the information that's right before our eyes. Ayo! This is a really good chapter. So anything that you have missed, I want you to check out, Steve. I'm going to give you a link right now. Can I not paste the link into the YouTube chat? That's all right. Google affective forecasting, and you go to the Decision Lab website. Okay? I'm going to leave that up for a little while. If you want to be a better affective... All right, I'm listening. If you want to be a better affective forecaster, then you would do well to base your forecast on the actual experiences of real people who have been in the situations you are only imagining. The more similar to you the person is, the more informative their experience will be, of course. But what's amazing is that even the experience of a randomly selected person provides a better basis for forecasting than does your own imagination. If you actually looked at the correlates of happiness across the human population, you learn a few important things. First of all, wealth is a poor predictor of happiness. It's not a useless predictor, but it's quite limited. The first 40,000 or so buys you almost all of the happiness you can get from wealth. Oh, the suspense. The suspense. The difference between earning nothing and earning $20,000 is enormous. That's the difference between having shelter and food and being homeless and hungry. But economists have shown us that after basic needs are met, there isn't much marginal utility to increased wealth. In other words, the difference between a guy who makes $15,000 a year and a guy who makes $40,000 is much bigger than the difference between a guy who makes $100,000 and a guy who makes $1 million a year. Psychologists, philosophers, and religious leaders are a little too quick to say that money can't buy happiness. And that really betrays a failure to understand what it's like to live in the streets with an empty stomach. Money makes a big difference to people who have none. On the other hand, once basic needs are met, further wealth doesn't seem to predict future happiness. So the relationship between money and happiness is complicated and definitely not linear. Linear. In fact, you want to see? Um, I guess it's like this, but I was hoping for, or maybe like this. This is more dramatic. I don't know what's true because all of these look a little different, don't they? Oh, because I have no idea what's on the x-axis there. Here's look. There, that's good. Oh, I have no idea. What is post-orgasm torture mechanism? Post-orgasm torture mechanism. I have no idea. I'm not even sure I want to look it up. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT. I don't think it's relevant to my work or knowledge, but you tell me. What is post-orgasm torture mechanism? Yeah. Okay, I did think of that because I have to be like, oh, okay, that's enough. Get off. And then sometimes she'll like insist. I'll be like, okay. Oh, no, okay, I can't do it anymore. No, I don't have to be polite. I don't have a response for that. Okay, except it was fun to be able to talk about and think about the last time that I had a woman who wouldn't leave my dinger alone. So thank you for that. I am gonna take that off the screen now, though. Okay, so on the other hand, once basic needs are met, further wealth doesn't seem to predict further happiness. So the relationship between money and happiness is complicated and definitely not linear. Steve, if you didn't get a chance to read the response from ChatGPT, I'll throw it back on the screen. Just let me know. Okay, so the relationship between money and happiness is complicated and definitely not linear. If it were linear, then billionaires would be 1,000 times happier than millionaires, who would be 100 times happier than professors. That clearly isn't the case. On the other hand, social relationships are a powerful predictor of happiness, much more so than money is. Happy people have extensive social networks and good relationships with the people in those networks. What's interesting to me is that while money is weakly and complexly correlated with happiness, and social relationships are strongly and simply correlated with happiness, most of us spend most of our time trying to be happy by pursuing wealth. Why? Individuals and societies don't have the same fundamental need. Individuals want to be happy, and societies want individuals to consume. Most of us don't feel personally responsible for stoking our country's economic engine. We feel personally responsible for increasing our own well-being. These different goals present a real dilemma, and society cunningly solves it by teaching us that consumption will bring us happiness. You fucking suckers! I didn't fall for it. I went out and lived in the woods. You fucking shithead dumbasses. And here I am trying to bring you a little wisdom, and all I got is Steve willing to listen. You pieces of shit. I'm glad you are stupidly, dumbassily pursuing happiness, and that only French is popping in my head. Bon, c'est mal barré. Toi, t'es mal barré. Et tu vas jamais y arriver. Et c'est pas le bon chemin. Et je t'emmerde. Society convinces us that what's good for the economy is good for us too. This message is delivered to us by every magazine, television, newspaper, and billboard at every bus stop, grocery store, and airport. It finds us in our cars. It's made its way into our clothing. And what about our fucking headphones, dude? Happiness, we learn, is just around the corner, and it requires that we consume just one more thing. And then just one more thing after that. So we do. We find out that the happiness of consumption is thin and fleeting. And rather than thinking to ourselves, gosh, that promise of happiness by consumption was a lie, we instead think, gosh, I must not have consumed enough, and I probably need just one small upgrade to my stereo, car, wardrobe, or wife, and then I'll be happy. We live in the shadow of a great lie, and by the time we figure out that it is a lie, we are closing in on death and have become irrelevant consumers. And a new generation of young and relevant consumers takes our place in the great chain of shopping. Do I make all these affective forecasting errors myself? You bet I do. Because of the research I do, I occasionally glimpse life from the experimenter's point of view, but most of the time, I'm just another one of life's subjects, and I do all the same things that everyone else does. I make the same mistakes the other subjects make, and if there's any difference between us, it is that I am dimly aware of my mistakes as I make them. But awareness isn't enough to stop me. Affective forecasting errors are a bit like perceptual illusions in this respect. Someone shows you a neat illusion and you say, what? It looks like the black rectangle is floating above the white one, even though it's really not. But that awareness doesn't make the illusion go away. Similarly, you can know at an intellectual level that an affective forecast is wrong, but that in and of itself doesn't change the fact that it feels so damn right. For example, my girlfriend is a consultant who has to live in different cities 5 days a week, and I am absolutely convinced that if she would just find a job in Cambridge and be home with me at night, I would be deliriously happy forevermore. I am as convinced as anyone that my big wambasa is just around the corner. But in fact, they would just argue more, blah, 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 and that's it. Honestly, I don't know. All of these have been bangers, but I feel like that was the biggest banger so far out of the three from Thinking by John Brockman, and this one by Dan Gilbert. So that's great. All right, and that's perfect. That's a half hour. Next is going to be, not now, but maybe later, Chapter 5, Adventures in Behavioral Neurology, or What Neurology Can Tell Us About Human Nature, by V.S. Ramachandran. Well, here he uses the name Vilayanur Ramachandran. And in 2013, he was indeed still at San Diego. Gosh, can you imagine if we get to see Ramachandran in person at this year's Neuro Conference in San Diego? Who's going with me? All right. There's all these options you can do with the people in the chat. You can add as a moderator. I was thinking about that yesterday. How do I reward Steve's continued presence? I don't know. But let's put a little heart there, I guess. Does that? I did it. Yeah, I don't know either. Okay, Steve. I will see you later. Let's see. How do you say like hello? Do you use marhaba? Sometimes? Do you use that? Do you use, dude, what? You're gonna say, that's Arabic, we don't use that. Okay, but you do use some. Oh, merhaba. Very good. You use that in Turkish, right? That's Turkish. Merhaba. Very good. Uh, okay, marhaba is Arabic. What do you mean that's not Arabic? Marhaba is Arabic. Marhaban bik. Buru! Very good. And bye in Turkish. Okay, gule gule. Well, I want to hear it. I don't know how to pronounce that. Let me say.
Güle güle.
Gule gule. Gule gule boru.